Coming up this week, we have a perler of a chat with Mr. Pankaj Khimji of the Oman Cricket Board and the Asian Cricket Council, but it's even bigger if you're an emerging cricket patron, where we've released an extended version of this week's show. You can become a patron of emerging cricket from as little as $2 a month. To sign up, log on to patreon.com/emergingcricket. Sit back and enjoy this one wherever you are, and we hope you enjoy our chat as much as we did putting it all together. When discussing some of the meteoric rises of associate cricket, Oman has emerged as a power in the game, and who better to discuss this with a giant in Oman, new Cricket Board Chairman and future Vice President of the Asian Cricket Council, Mr. Pankaj Khimji. Welcome to the Emerging Cricket Podcast.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to discussing whatever you think is associated with meteoric rises of cricket in the cricketing world.
Yes. Well, Oman's story is fascinating. It's very much a family affair between you and your father. And first of all, we send our condolences with all of that as well. A monumental achievement your father Kanaksi had in the area, and you starting up now, 1979 to now. There's been such a huge move of cricket in the country. Looking at you now, you're taking the chairman role and the vice presidency of the Asian Cricket Council. What's it going to be like for you juggling the two roles, and how have you prepared for all of that in the coming months when that all comes to fruition?
Well, first of all, I need to get my head down into the Oman cricketing, but thank God we've got a fantastic apparatus. We've got a superb management and a cricketing team. My board at Oman Cricket has been rock solid, and we have a very clear dividing line between cricket and governance. And we do not, as board, interfere with cricket. We govern, we guide, we make policies, we handhold, we put your hand on the shoulder of the guys who are operating. And we do not discuss, hardcore cricket issues. Those are left to the Dilip and the coaches and the trainers and the media. So we're very clear about that. One. Number two, we've got a superb mix of very capable, very dedicated, very passionate board members, and makes life so much easier. There are no, we're not carrying any baggage or dead wood. Let's put it this way. Every one of our board members has been associated with cricket in some way or the other. And only then have we really supported each other. And this makes a big difference. And the biggest asset, or the biggest so-called acquisition, the mindset that you require is basically the passion for the game. Because we reward our board members zilch with nothing. We do not pay them sitting fees. We do not kind of thing. We said, listen, you have a passion for cricket. You think that you want to add or give something back to cricket. Let's do it. So we've got chartered accountants, we've got lawyers, we've got business kind of tycoons in the business, we've got industrialists. So we've got a very fair mix of people, and all we focus on is cricket. And we've also got the previous so-called municipal chief of the region of this thing, who's just retired from government. We said, right, come on in, because we need to somebody needs to take care of all the red tape in government as well. So he's come on board, and we've just added 3 more board members, and it's really superb. It's really excellent. And it's got a very nice mix of nationalities, cultures, people. I think that helps. Number 2, we made sure that we had a very strong operations team, and Dilip Mendes, a legend of the game, has been CEO of Sri Lanka Cricket, has been manager of the Sri Lankan cricket team, which won the World Cup in Pakistan. He's been a captain of Sri Lanka, superb human being, so down to earth, so humane. The team loves him. We love him as the board, and he's very happy living in Oman. And Oman is probably a great country to live in and things. So I think this whole atmosphere, creating a harmonious atmosphere and a very good working relationship with your teams is the most important thing. So I think I want to maintain that. Give each one their space to demonstrate, to basically come out and speak or act, and that is very important. Number 2, let's not rush into anything. If you look at the last 7 years of how cricket has developed in Oman, or how Oman has developed its national team and its rankings from the 38th associate country to being now ranked number 13, number 14 in the world in ODI status, getting an ODI international status, getting a T20 international status, getting approvals for the grounds to be ODI and T20 international status, and now getting even a test status on our ground, where we were about to host Zimbabwe against Afghanistan, and sadly that could not be materialized. But c'est la vie. They say, there will be a day we will host it again. So I think that'll be the capping point. So yeah, lots to do, but no concerns on how things will progress because business as usual.
Yeah. So Pankaj, you've got the plans going with the board. I'm just thinking, looking a bit sort of backwards in your story. The Khimji family has been heavily involved in Omani cricket for a number of years now.
Yeah.
And so just tell us a bit about your family story and where you fit into the picture.
So, if you go back many, many years, cricket in Oman used to be played in the late 50s and 60s when visiting naval ships or merchant navy ships came and anchored in our waters. And they would come in and say, can we do something? So I remember there was a royal family member, late Sayyid Abbas, who was our first patron in chief. And he said, right, let's muster up some guys who are working in the armed forces, guys from the community, and let's see who can play cricket. So, there was a very decent Indian community, a trading community over here. So there were some 5 or 6 boys from there. Some of them were seconded officers in the army and over here. So they came together and they started playing games. So they first played on a coir mat, and then they had no outfield at all. I mean, it was like a gravel plane, and they started playing. And I think that gave the impetus that, yes, there is some amount of cricket that can be played. And then in the 70s, my father who'd gone to school, he was born in Muscat, but he went to school in Mumbai. And when you play in the Maidans and the grounds of Mumbai and the streets of Mumbai and in the alleyways of Mumbai and in your corridors at home, cricket kind of gets into you. My father was very, very passionate about cricket in particular, but most field sports, right from table tennis, badminton, cricket. I'm not sure whether he played hockey, but cricket was his first love. And he carried it back, but obviously there were very few opportunities. So when the Renaissance, which is 1970 onwards, came on, the first thing they did in the early 70s was to set up a little a group of cricket enthusiasts, which is Highness and my father. And he was then elected the first so-called president of Oman Cricket in the mid-70s. And they started organizing corporate cricket amongst the large corporate houses that had come in, construction companies, to build Oman in the early days. So Taylor Woodrow's and the Gray Mackenzies and Skanska from this thing. But most of them were hiring Asian middle management and workers. So there was a lot of Asians, and they started playing cricket, and that's how cricket started. But he followed cricket. I remember in the late 70s, he actually went and wrote a check of 1,000 rupees and 5,000 rupees each to some of the big boys who performed well from India, because obviously his favorite team was India. And he sold them a checks. And I think that was cricketers in the old days, when they were rank amateurs in terms of their professional status, were always endowed by the old patriarch families, whether they were the Maharaja families, or if you look at the Indian cricket scene, 50, 100 years ago, most of those teams were kind of patronized and provided for by the Maharajas, the Barodas, the Indores, the Holkars, the Patialas of the world, and they built the stadiums. So I think every game or everything, any sport, if it needs to be lifted up in terms of thing, it needs a passionate family who do not look at what are the returns. It's a lot about giving and about the passion for the game. So if you don't have it, if you don't have the stomach for it, then you're not. I mean, it's like being a chef. And you don't start off being a chef because you want to earn money. You start off being a chef because you're interested. And I think that interest in the game, the sheer passion in the game, which brought in a lot of people. And because of the fact that we had a patron who was always from the royal family, there weren't any infighting. So, we were afraid to have any squabbles within the board and within the management, within the apparatus. And it was always hand to mouth. Whatever we charged teams to play the league was spent in improvement of the grounds and building the ground. And we were brown grounds till about 8 years ago. We didn't have a green field. It's only 7-8 years ago that we started having our first ground. So it's a big journey. It's been a great achievement in terms of the infrastructure development that has happened. But from a family perspective, I went also to Mumbai because there were no schools, no proper schools in Muscat. So I went to Mumbai and I learned my cricket the same way that he did. But I played a little bit of inter-school cricket, and my contemporaries were Ravi Shastri. So I've actually played a game against Ravi Shastri in the school game. Huh. So we then knew of each other. We became friends. By then, my father we started then going and following cricket in Sharjah, which was a 4.5-hour drive. And I remember we used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get in the car at 5, And my father would insist that he would also get into the Sharjah Stadium at 8:30 or 8:15 to be precise, because he wanted to see the toss and see the team composition. And those days, he was such a figure. He was so friendly with the Gavaskars of the world and the Jay Amarnaths of the world that he would actually walk into the dressing room and go and pat them on the back and say, guys, what would you like for lunch? I'll guys get somebody from the house to get. We had a house in Dubai. My mother would sometimes cook. Sometimes we'd have staff. And we would come and give them little bagfuls of chapatis and puris and potato sabji. And this is how it worked. And there was nobody stopping you. There were no guards. There was no protocol of saying that you can't walk into a player's dressing room. No, we walked into the dressing room. And that's how I got into knowing the players. And basically, I would say father was more the patron and a patriarch to the game in general, at least in this part of the world, and became very well known. The great thing was when he passed away, within 72 hours, the famous 1983 Indian cricket team that won the World Cup in England, 9 out of the 11 players in the team actually had sent me a message.
Wow.
Amazing. I mean, so it's amazing. So that's the kind of regard. And then I think it was also in Sydney or Melbourne, that in MCG, that he was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award for his services to cricket by the ICC. So he got that about 8 years ago, the same year that we got the 38th associate nation status in the ICC. So I think it's passion to answer that question and then summarizing an answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's quite obvious in what you guys have tried to achieve. And I compare that to a few places where I see that there isn't really passion. And I look at franchise T20 leagues that try to get it off the ground and never do, because a lot of them are more interested in about how they make money rather than the passion for the game. But on the flip side of that, there are a lot of associate members that fall into the same category, that cricket is actually booming per capita by how many people are potentially in a country, how many people play in the country, because the passion is so rife. And I look at that national team on the field, the Omani national team, and when they achieved one-day international status in Namibia at World Cricket League 2, we were lucky enough to be there. We'd heard about these much fabled Omani lunches that were put on.
No, I can endorse the Omani lunches.
Oh, did you get one?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Bravo.
Yeah, I did not take the ICC food. I knew where the good food was.
Thank you.
I unfortunately didn't manage to get my hands on that.
So, we as a family, we traveled, we followed the Omani team. I mean, father and mother both were in Scotland and Ireland when we first qualified for the first T20 World Cup in India in 2015. And then out of the teams that qualified to play, I think there were about, 8 teams, 9 teams, and only 3 or 4 would have gone in to the World Cup. And we were ranked number 8 or 9. And there was, we just about made it into that qualification stage in Ireland, Scotland. So when we went there, we were saying, okay. So even if we come in the top 5, we're fine. But we came number 4 and we made it to the World Cup final. So at that time, we were about 10 of us or 9 of us who were there in Scotland and Ireland. And I remember my father stayed from Scotland, which was where the first half was played, and then in Dublin, where the second half was played of that tournament. And I attended the first game or the first 2 games. And then when I had work to do in India, my father, within a week, when we started playing, we started winning games, he said, "You're coming back now." So I actually flew back. I was in India, and I flew back from India, back again to Dublin to see the semi-final and the final. The games against Namibia and the game thereafter against Afghanistan, which decided who was number 3 and 4. But that was him. He stayed the full 21 days. We then followed up the game. They went to India. We were in Dharamshala. We played superb out there as well. Beat Ireland, our first real win at the World Cup. We then went back and did various tours of Uganda, Namibia together, on various safaris together. So, the travel and the camaraderie and the so-called gamesmanship, which was coming in, and we enjoyed that following the game. And I think that the team likes the idea of having, you around, because they feel that, okay, there's somebody there to look after you. And he said, you win, we go out for dinner at night. I pay. That's it. Simple. It was a simple rule.
The best.
You don't win, you go back to your rooms, you eat your hotel food, and you sulk, or you recover from whatever you have to do. Simple as that. And we'll get you little snacks and food during the game. Yeah, fine. Mommy would bring them, and we'd bring them. And, yeah.
And again, to look at how the team is comprised, it is a very diverse team, just like you were talking about with the board and everything that runs through Omani cricket, which to me again suggests that cricket kind of transcends everything in all of this, and it's a very passionate group of players and a passionate group of officials and boards and everyone who works for the Omani Cricket Board. Take it back a little bit further to maybe the domestic cricket scene in Oman.
Yeah.
What's club and recreational cricket like? Does it embody the same sort of spirit as the national team? How does it manifest itself in that part?
So we have, unlike cricketing countries, which have, and especially, let's say, countries which have been under the colonial past, where cricket has been a way of life, especially in the summer months or in the cricketing season, we did not really have that. So we didn't have clubs who played cricket because the national passion was either football or field hockey. And we were catering purely to the expatriate population. So we had to kind of get corporates to field teams. So we have 80 plus teams that play in our league, from A to something like G division. So 8, 9, 10 divisions, and about 5 to 7 teams participating in each one of them. And then we have the Premier Division, which has 5 teams. Now, these teams are all sponsored by corporates. There's no clubs that come and play the game. The only clubs that come and play the game are the 8 full Omani teams. They're sponsored by clubs. They're not sponsored by any individual. But otherwise, it's all a corporate sport. Once they reach a particular level, it becomes very passionate. And 100% of our team, even the national team, would you imagine that they're all extremely amateur cricketers? They're not on any professional contract. We give them a stipend, pretty much like a bonus, and it's marginal. It really is. Literally, they can just about get 2 square meals a day if they were to go by that. They can't live on it. They have to have a side profession. So most of them work 9 to 5, and then they come in. We now have a few players who've stayed back, and the sponsors have relieved them from their work requirements, and they can hang around the cricket ground. They can practice. They've reduced their salaries, and we've increased the stipend. So it compensated them, and now they're working. But they're not on contract. They don't work for Oman Cricket, none of them. So we don't have any national players who are either employed by us or sponsored by us on our work visa. So we still very much pride ourselves in the fact that we are still a very professionally amateur cricketing nation, where the commercial lure of being a national cricketer hasn't quite bitten. So long as I think we stay amateur, so long as the board and the management also offer the money requirements, I think we'll stay same. So that's the cricket scene. So the domestic scene is very tight, very competitive. We start in the month of September-ish, and we end by the end of April. And we've got 50-over game tournament. The junior teams, so the top ABC is 50 overs. The rest of them play a 25-over league, or we used to play 25. Now we follow the T20 format. So we have the 2 green grounds, and the rest of them play on brown outfields with the cement pitch with an AstroTurf wicket.
So you just talked about how the Omani team is largely amateur even today, and
yeah.
I guess that raises an interesting question in terms of Oman's position within the international rankings, and how competitive do you see Oman getting with amateur players, and is there any sort of plans in the future to move towards a professional structure?
Listen, we have debated this all the time. Do we want to go professional? Do we not want to go professional? How high do you want to go up the ladder in ODI? I mean, a month ago, we were ranked 13th country in the ODI circuit. So last week, it became 14th. We haven't played cricket, so I don't know how that worked, but somebody must have played a couple of games and have gone up the ranking. That's fine. It doesn't really bother us. I don't see myself growing beyond 13, 14, going any higher. I think we've reached that epitome of where we expect to be. My responsibility, and I think our main mandate would be now in the next 3 to 5 years, is to maintain this level, that we stay within the top 3, 4, 5 nations which are not fully test class. So if we can stay within 20 to 15, or I would say 17 to 13 in our rankings at ODI level, and similarly amongst the top 20 in the T20 status, I think we would have achieved some consistency, and then we'll know exactly where we're going and what is it that is lacking. Because I see a very strong America coming out. I see a very strong Nepal being built. I think there might be 1 or 2 surprises coming out of Africa. And will we be able to withstand the onslaught and the professionalism that might come in? So I think America in the last 3 years were completely out of sorts, because the combination of reasons of, one fragmented approach. Now that they've got a good apparatus in place who are putting it together, I think they're going to come very strong. So will we be able to maintain that level? Dilip certainly believe so. How good is my bench strength? Will I still keep getting a fresh talent. Now, another good thing that happens is that we've got a very strong inter-schools game. There are about 35 school teams playing Thursday evening cricket under lights. And we really make it very competitive. And the good thing is that my top two players in rankings, ICC rankings and Oman rankings, are both nurtured from the schools cricket. So when they've been playing Oman schools cricket tournament since they were 13, and they're now number one and number two cricketers for Oman cricket. They're in their 20s, they're young, they're hungry, and it shows. And, they've really performed. So I'm hoping that one or two more might come up from the schools cricket and stay here. My problem is that I get them in to play under 13, under 16, under 19. But as soon as they finish school, they go to university abroad. So I, having groomed them and nurtured them from a cricketing standpoint for the last 5-7 years, I lose him when he's at his prime. I need him most. So 80% of them go away. 20% of them who are in the cricketing thing might stay. We're now trying to entice them by staying on, by offering them a university scholarship in Oman, part scholarship. So I pay a third, the university discounts a third, and the parents will sponsor the other third. So, instead of paying, let's say, $10,000 per year on a scholarship, then now the father has to pay only $3,000 if he leaves his son here and is there for the next 3 to 4 years. So, that really helps. So those are the kind of things, incentives that we're trying to provide to the youth team and see whether we can entice them to stay here rather than go back to India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or whatever.
I think this is just fascinating because when we discuss a lot of associate countries' issues, a lot of them have the same issues, but I think what gets forgotten in a lot of it is that in different parts of the world, people and associate members have very different issues. I can't see many having that problem of going overseas to study in their university studies and losing your talent that way. There's so many other issues that happen in the associate world. That's just another one that adds to a very long list. But looking at the national team that you do have now, tell us a bit about some of the individuals there. We know a lot about their performances on the field. Bilal Khan bowls Yorkers at will. He's one of the brightest lights in the associate game, at least with the ball. Zishan Maksud seems like a very inspired leader when he runs the team. Talk us about some of the personalities of the national team, because I think they collectively show a lot of spirit when they play. But from an Omani point of view, I don't think we hear a lot of them individually. So tell us about some of the personalities in that team.
So we've got a fantastic mix. First of all, I think we've got 2 or 3 different nationalities playing in this one team, and then coached by a 4th nationality, and then trained by another 5th nationality, and then probably analyzed by a 6th nationality. So, there's a huge, and it's a hot pot. And the one thing we do not tolerate, zero tolerance for, one discipline. It's cricketing rules. You bat both on and off the field with a straight bat. We do not accept any indiscipline. 1, no racial connotations, direct and indirect, of any sort within the team. 0. Number 3, we do not discriminate between class of people in the team, captain. No, everybody has a voice and everybody dictates the voice, and we leave it to Duleep and his people to manage the team. We, the board, do not interfere with team management. And it's a very clear demarcation. Do not question the manager on what's happening in the team. You expect the manager to upgrade you, that's fine, but do not tell him, why didn't you do that? No. That's not your business. You're not qualified enough to do that. And simple as that. So I think once you lay down the ground rules, then the team players suddenly realize that there's no politics out here. I don't need to go and whether you like it or not, it happens in any sport, that you are so desperate to get into the second 11 or the first 11 that at some point in time you lose consciousness of what is right and what is wrong, and you will go that one step beyond to make your lifelong dream happen. And players realize that it won't happen over here. It doesn't matter whether you know Mr. Pankaj Khimji or whether you know Mr. Duleep Mendes that much better, or you've gone to his home. No, we don't have that. We leave cricket to cricket and governance to govern. So I think we've laid those ground rules and we've made sure that there is no thing. And even within the board, we do not have any issues in terms of things. So a lot of the times, squabbles happen between teams, team management, boards, fees, money, players' unions, etc., etc. As long as you keep that out of your equation, you'll be running a straight mathematical sum. You bring in 20 players, you play 15 players, you make sure that 5 players in the bench strength out of 20 get rotated all the time, the best performers come in, and people who haven't performed. So we have a performance evaluation system that works on a 6-monthly basis. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 players in the top 20, and they keep changing all the time. And this is done on a very democratic way by the team management. So we keep on doing that, and I think it's been very fair, and Duleep's been absolutely non-political in that. in that front. And I think it then percolates down. So when you have a board and then you have a top management and then you have a team captain and and as long as they stay apolitical, things work out. And I think more often than not, it's favoritism or a camaraderie that sometimes leads ways to kind of saying, oh, he's done so well, why don't you give him another chance? No, we don't do that. Again, going back to who are my key players, I love our young boys. AQ, which is Akib Elias, Akib and Jati.
That's Jatinder Singh, yeah?
Yes. So Akib and Jati are my two favorite batsmen, no questions about it. And both schoolboy cricketers in Oman, both have grown up the ranks. And probably that's half the reason why I like them more than I like the other half. But that shouldn't be the case. As now as chairman of Oman Board, I love every one of my 35 top identified players.
No favorite children.
But I have a special emotional connect with these two because I've seen them grow and play the thing and really grow into being international cricketers. And I'm very proud of them. One. Number two, the way Zishan Maqsood has led the team. Before him, Sultan led the team. Sultan was an extremely astute captain and a superb wicketkeeper. And Maqsood came on and did a phenomenal job and has done a phenomenal job. And then we brought in some young rookies who came on and did a fantastic job. But if you go back to 2015, we had this bowler who bowled a very Malinga slinger, kind of sidearm action and lethal Yorkers. He's now in his late 30s of age.
Ansari, yeah?
Yeah, Muniz. You remember him?
Yeah. Well, how could we forget?
Yeah, what a player. I mean, so Muniz was the real fast bowling thing that we brought on and fantastic. And Bilal, I think, when I talk to my two South African trainers and physios, they underline saying the most hardworking cricketer in the team is Bilal Khan. And it shows, right? When he's performing on the ground, if he hasn't picked up wickets in the first 3 overs, he's going to do it in the next 4, if not in the last 3. So, he's the kind of bowler that, you want to look up. He's probably the Bumrah of Oman's team, or he's the Cummins of the Oman team, that you look up to. The captain will go up to say, get me that one, put him right or slow it down or whatever it happens. So he's been just fantastic. And that game against Hong Kong when we qualified for the World Cup and ODI status again in UAE, the guy bowled he was a man possessed. So I think I like Bilal very much. I mean, great cricketer. What an athlete. We then have Khawar.
Khawar Ali, yeah.
Khawar is now, in his mid to late 30s. An amazing leg spinner, superb googly, but an opening bat. Now, when we went into Uganda, the guy got out 6 games and he got out 4 times in single figures. But he went on to take the maximum number of wickets in the tournament and came out to be the best bowler of the tournament. Amazing. The guy got us wickets at all times. So I think there's been a great evolution in the way they played. A leg spinner was no way could a leg spinner play in a limited over game. They were virtually going to be a slow death. And now look at it. Every other good bowler is a leggy, right? But he doesn't bowl just a leg spin. Earlier, you would have a leg spin and a googly. There was no other ball. But now he's bowling all sorts of things. Up spin, back spins, the 6 balls will be 6 different balls. I mean, look at Rashid Khan. Probably the best exponent of spin bowling in today's cricket, I think. And, the boys, the last 2 years and a half, 3 years, since we started playing the WCL2, they've just gained so much experience. They've just gained so much confidence or so much international experience in playing. I mean, going to Nepal, beating Nepal in their own backyard, going to the USA, beating USA in their own backyard, going to Namibia, beating Namibia in their own backyard. It takes a lot of courage. It's not a fluke. It's not just a one-off kind of thing. So I believe that, these boys under Duleep's guidance and under certain amount of mindset, they've just got the right mind in their heads. They've got the right head on their shoulders, and they've got a physical attribute now, thanks to Everett and Sean. They've just become that much more endurance-wise, that much better. We're getting less niggles and injuries at the end of the tournament. That's how I gauge the fitness thing. I don't look at what is available to me at the start of the tournament. It's more important that at the end of 6 games in 8 days, will I have 11 that can play in 2 more games if I had to? Or, will we be going back with 4, handicaps? So I think one is the fact that we spend a lot of money on a lot of time and energy on the fitness and the regime. Try telling a Pathan that you can't have your basmati rice and naan bread and you can't have your butter chicken. Try telling an Indian Sardar from Punjab saying that, sorry, I won't let you have your lassi and your mutton Rogan Josh. But Everett and Sean were able to convince them to do that. But it's not only about the training, it's also about what you put in. What you put in stays in more often than not. I mean, and especially the ones that you really like to eat, that stays in longer. So I think that they've now realized what is good and what is not good for them. And when we come into the season, they started eating better. They're more alert. They're more fitness wise. So yeah, great individuals in the team, but more importantly, a very well-knit team.
On top of the nutrition and the training regime, a key component of all of that is also the facilities. And looking at Al Amarat now, and we've only seen photos, we've heard from Peter Della Penna how great the facilities are there. There was a lot of organisation in regards to all of that. Talk us through how that came into being, and now it's recognised by the ICC as a test venue. Unfortunately, it didn't get that test match, and we all know why, of course. But I'm sure there will be one in the near future. Tell us about the Al Amarat facility.
So about 15 years ago, when we got the land allocation from the Ministry of Sport saying, okay, this is the land we're allocating for cricket. It was about 70,000 square meters. So we could build 2 nice proper grounds, but we needed money. Now, let me tell you from a commercial point of view, what we earn from cricket teams membership to the Oman Cricket Association on an annual basis where they get to play the leagues and knockout tournaments. What we earn, we spend in the same year. So we're at the end of the year, we're broke, but we cover all our costs. We have no debts and we don't have any subsidies coming in from the government. So we are a self-financed organization. The question was, do we grow our international recognition or do we grow grassroots? Now, to grow grassroots, you need money with less money coming in. If I grow internationally, I get funding from ICC and I get recognition. Recognition will mean more people will participate in sports. Once they participate in sports, they get into training. Then I can charge them to train. So I think we followed the second thing, which is let's go international first. Let's get recognized. Let's spend money on that. So we wrote a very passionate letter to His Majesty, our late Majesty. And we told him that, listen, the cricket is the last sport where the rules of the game dictate everything else. It's a very disciplined sport where the 2 teams do not even touch each other, where you do not even raise an eyebrow to the umpire or the on-field referee, where people still play whites, though there are some colored pajama crickets that are also being introduced, which are getting more popular, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, exactly, yeah.
And so we wrote this kind of letter to His Majesty. And His Majesty is a Sandhurst graduate, is a strict disciplinarian, has raised Oman from the dark days to its glorious 50 years and renaissance as one of the leading global countries today. So we wrote to him in that form and he said, if we can have an X amount, then we'll be able to develop an infrastructure and we'll be able to develop both grassroots and the international status together. And it'll give Oman a recognition. And in 15 days, we got an answer to go ahead. And that made us build the infrastructure that we have today, which I think amongst the developing nations in cricket terms, amongst the associate nations, I haven't seen an associate nation that has the kind of infrastructure. So I'm very proud of what we have achieved. And I think the board is very proud and the country is very proud. So we actually signed up with the MCC and told them, tell us how you built your indoor facility. Tell us what we need to do in terms. And we didn't want to build a stadium because it's not about 5,000 people. It's about the 20 people on the ground. So we said that first, let's cater to the cricketers. The audience will build benches and then we'll build a little shade and then we'll build a little stand and we'll go and build a ground with audience facilities. So everything we put in was with the cricketer in mind and nothing else. It's not about building a grand thing. So I think that really helped us. 1. Number 2, we also used part of the money to bring in full-time coaches. And we also made sure that these coaches imparted the grassroots development program as well. Unfortunately, we were about to launch it in January last year. COVID, schools weren't allowed to go and participate in group sports, etc. So we're waiting to roll out. We've got all the coaches on standby. We've got a huge indoor facility, which is absolutely excellent. We had Lancashire who came and trained with us pre-season. We had Middlesex that came and trained a little bit, and Nottinghamshire who came and trained pre-season. We've had various teams that have come and played friendlies over here with us. We are looking at probably some national teams and everyone who's come and played the WCL too, saying, listen, do we really need to go to certain countries that they're saying, no, can we not just play it in Oman? We don't mind if you have the home advantage. So I think I said it's not up to us, it's up to ICC. ICC loves us. I think they've been very fair to us. They like the fact that we're very clean and even our programs are very, very clear. We have, from a financial fiscal discipline point of view, we're probably the first people who submit our balance sheets and our P&Ls and our cost breakdowns on what funds we receive from them and how we spent them, etc. So I think from that standpoint, we have a very good working relationship.
Just connecting some of the dots, just with the Al Amarat facility, you mentioned some of the plans for the usage, obviously the indoor facility and hosting potentially neutral games. So what's the long-term idea for Al Amarat? Is the idea that it'll become sort of a regional hub in a similar way to the UAE?
See, Oman, I don't see us building a grandstand. Like I said, I do not see us building public infrastructure. I will build one more ground. If I were given $1 million, I'd build one more ground, or I'd put on lights in the second ground. I'm not interested in making this a huge thing. I want this to be best green fields, the best cricketing infrastructure for amateur cricketers. And anyone who wants to come and play, I'll give them as good an international ground as one can have. So I think I'll maintain the status quo that I'm in at the moment. I've got a very good indoor facility. I've got 7 beautiful wickets done by Gaba, 2 spin, 2 fast, and 3 normal wickets. And they are not green in color, like most AstroTurf indoor wickets are. They're actually sand in color, which is how wickets are normally in the color in the real life.
Yes.
It's a superb thing, which has a full 20-yard run-up, by the way, all the 7 wickets, unlike most indoor facilities, which have little run-up for a fast bowler. They literally have less than 10 yards. So it doesn't really help a fast bowler. And we've got rubber mats underneath the main area where the front foot is not coming under a lot of stress and the knee's not under the thing. Because when you bowl indoors, you have this fear of hurting your knees and your joints because you are coming down very heavy on a very hard ground. So we've made sure that we had a very nice little felt and a little sponge, especially in the bowler's run-up, coming up to the front foot where it lands.
I like all the player consideration in all of this. I think one thing that I harp on about here at times, and I have noticed it from listening back to a few of the shows, is that player welfare, especially in associate cricket, is hugely important. Without the players, there's no entertaining cricket for us to watch.
There's no team.
So looking ahead to July 1, when you take the vice presidency at the ACC, what do you intend to bring in that space under Jay Shah?
See, what Asian cricket, let's understand Asian cricket. So it's these 20-odd countries from Hong Kong all the way up to the GCC. And we survive because of the Asia Cup. Asia Cup provides a lot of funding, which then trickles down to a lot of the Asian cricket associates, which really helps us in our little developments that we want to do and think. Unless we don't do Asia Cup and 1 or 2 more, and there's an emerging Asia Cup, and then there's another T20 and so on. So it boils down to the fact that we need to find in our calendar, in the very busy calendar of the Big 4, Big 5 now, we've got Afghanistan as a full team, to get them to come together to play this Asia Cup. And the more we play within Asia, within the region, and getting the upcoming associate countries to come and play that, how else are you going to encourage cricket? So my role is going to be, can we organize, instead of 3 tournaments across 3 years, can we do 4 or 5 tournaments across 4 years, or 5 tournaments across 3 years? So if we do a calendar of 3 years, can we bring in 1 more tournament and add 1 or 2 more developing countries or associate countries to participate in those tournaments? So it's all about more cricket. Thankfully, because having India on your side and Pakistan and Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, there's no dearth of television coverage once they start playing. But if you consider what's happening next, is that if you look at the emerging tournament, the Asian Cricket Emerging Tournament, the second teams from India and Pakistan today can go and play any country. If you look at what happened in Australia when the Indian team visited them. Today, now you've got an Indian team, a second 11 is going to play in Sri Lanka between the end of the World Cup Test match and the start of the series in England, because they can't, because of this bio bubble, they have to stay back in England. So the second team looks like 8 out of 11 players have played already international cricket. So we're saying that let's have a second 11 playing against 4 or 5 associates from the big boys, because that itself will attract the television to fund the games and also get some revenue to percolate down into the associates and other developing countries. So, I believe that the likes of Nepal, the likes of Hong Kong and Malaysia and Singapore, they've got a lot of potential to come out of. I also believe that one other GCC country, UAE, is definitely good. I mean, a little bit of honing here and there, and they'll be back in their prime. And now they've got Robin Singh as their coach full-time. They've got players on full-time contract. And unfortunately, last year and the year before, they had some issues with this disciplining, and they lost nearly half the team, or not full team, which caused them a lot of hiccups. I hope that is now out of the way and they can get on with cricket. But, I think these 3-4 countries, if they play more cricket within the Asian region, not just against each other, but against the better teams, a second 11 from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, then we'll be able to kind of match up to those levels. And I think more cricket is all about what I want to kind of canvas for going into the Asian ACC. Look, I was a member of the board in any case, but now I'm expected to kind of take on some role in the finance and development committees as well, where I'll be able to kind of express my things, saying development committee would also mean the grants, and the finance committee would also mean revenues. So if we can see all that and then balance that with the revenues and see how we can increase the revenue and which we need some more handouts for the associates.
I think I could speak on behalf of Nick here and put our hands up and say that we would support an emerging nations Asia Cup. And with a name like Emerging Cricket, I think it's just a match made in heaven in terms of media partnerships. But that's another discussion for another day.
So we've talked a bit about the men's team, and we have seen the women's national team in Oman play a few games. They played a series against Germany last year, and there were some interesting moves with some social programs and private partnerships in Oman to empower the women. What are some of the cultural challenges with building the women's team, and where do you see that going for Oman?
See, the women's cricket is, again, another challenge. We have a lot of girls interested in playing whilst they're at school and after school. But again, they all, as soon as they finish high school, they want to go to university. Most girls want to go to good universities abroad, and they don't stay back. Now, the girls' development, it's not like a 19-year-old boy that he's strong, and he's an 18-year-old boy has started developing his physique. The girls getting their strength more when they're in their 20s, and they're their strongest and fittest. And so I'm losing out on girls strength-wise. So I got a girls' team, but I don't have a women's team. In fact, my girls are stepping into the women's shoes to play women's cricket. So I'm missing out on that. And we do not have women players in cricket. So I'm not sure how I can encourage women to play cricket. And like I can encourage men to play cricket, but it becomes difficult if a woman hasn't played cricket in her lifetime to get her to come wield a bat. And they won't go on the streets and start playing gully cricket either, unlike men going for obvious reasons. So I think we've got a little issue in terms of getting the right kind of people and getting the thing. But our grassroots program to inculcate cricket at schools level in the government schools and in the local community schools in Oman, that had a huge impact because we got nearly 40% women when we launched that program, girls at the age group of 8 to 10, that local girls would come and play cricket without an issue, wearing the same t-shirt, the same shorts. So we got that kind of encouraging results. And we were about to roll it out. So I think we're a fair way away from playing competitive women's cricket. But girls' cricket, yes, we'll play good girls' cricket, at least for the time being.
You've mentioned, obviously, you just talked about the government program, the government schools, and the relationship with the government. And I remember, last year when the Sultan Qaboos bin Said and he died, and the Cricket World Cup League 2 was had to be called off for the national mourning.
Halfway, yeah.
And it was a big deal. And so obviously Oman's cricket, you talked about also the relationship with Al Amarat. So clearly there's a relationship with the government there. What is the place of cricket within Oman, and maybe talk a bit about the dynamic with the government?
Oman has got a very diverse culture. We've got the influence of Zanzibar, and we've got people, Omanis, who were in Zanzibar when Zanzibar was a part of Oman, who've come back and have lived here. So they bring in a little bit of the East African flavor. Some of them have played cricket and have seen cricket in Tanzania and in Mombasa and these places. So they understand that there's a game called cricket, number one. Number two, we've got a huge proximity to India and Pakistan. Remember, Oman owned Gwadar, a little port city in Pakistan. So there was a huge Baluchi population that came and migrated and started living in Oman. And with that, they brought in their affinity to cricket as well. So the mixture of cultures amongst communities in Oman has really helped adapt cricket much more easier than I would say any other country in the Middle East. And we've always had this royal patronage. So our first patron was Sayyid Abbas bin Faisal, who initiated the act of putting up an Oman cricket club. And then we had Sayyid Shabib, who had studied in Pakistan and understood cricket. And he kind of became the second patron, again, a royal family member, His Majesty's uncle. And then His Majesty himself, who took over from His Majesty Qaboos last January. He was our patron since 1992 as our patron in chief. And, what a coincidence that in 2019, the World Cup, July in London at Lord's, we both were in the royal box watching the full final. Then he comes back here. He's been to the MCC twice. He's also, can you imagine, he was witness to that very famous Indian victory over England in that ODI when Ganguly ripped his shirt apart and waved it up from the balcony at the thing, where they chased 315 or 316, where Mahmud Khaif and Yuvraj Singh kind of chased in probable total. So he was there. He was witness for that as well.
That's a hell of a game to be there for, yeah.
Exactly. And then every year we would have a game of the patron chief's 11 against the president's 11. And it would be my father against His Majesty. And he was then just the Minister of Culture and Heritage at the time, but he was still very much a highness, very much part of the royal family. And he would come out and play. He would don his whites. He would put on the pads. He would bowl. He would then complain the fact that my shoulder aches after bowling this thing. What is this action arm? Can I not bowl any other way? Do I have to turn the thing? But, he also went to boarding school in England. So he understands that cricket was played in the summer in England. So he understands the game. So he's been extremely supportive. I must say it makes a big difference when you have patronage and support from the highest order and coming down. And now, fortunately, his own son, our heir apparent, has become named the Minister of Sports and Youth, and who I have known as virtually as family. And, he's suddenly, you suddenly have a voice, you suddenly have an ear of somebody up there, and it cuts out all the red tape. So, we don't have to battle administration, or we don't have to battle red tape over here. We send a message and it gets done. We want 30 visas for the Afghans, even in times when Afghans were persona non grata. In 72 hours, we had 30 visas. What about Zimbabweans? Oh, we've not issued visas to Zimbabwe for over 10 years now. I said, but we need to bring the Zimbabwe team down for the test. 36 hours, 30 visas issued to Zimbabwe. That's how good the government has been. And, I said, what do you need? Don't ask for some money, but everything else in kind we'll give you. So I said, can we borrow some buses? Because, if I go to hire a bus and a driver to transport teams back and forth, if they're going to stay here for a month, it's going to be difficult. Done. So I had the D1 buses. D1 is the Royal Protocol. So they gave me the buses. Said, you can have them. So, it's been a superb relationship. And I can't thank them enough. And I believe that it's working as one, understanding the trust, the belief that we have in each other and they have in us has gone a long way.
Okay, so in all of our other podcasts and every time we invite a guest, we ask them if there was a law in cricket that they wish to change, what would it be and why? I know we've put you on the spot here, but if there was to be a law, do you think the game's perfect as it is?
I think cricket is a very perfect game. It's played with a straight bat, and that's what matters. I mean, in the sense that I'm talking about. But a couple of laws that I feel are impartial to either the batsman or to the bowler. I believe the bowlers are not given their fair share. I think certain things like marketing should be either it is on or it's not on. Clarify. Why do we need to have an ambiguity in saying that's not cricket? But you're allowing it. Why don't you just put one line saying marketing not done, or marketing is okay as long as you warn the cricketer? So I think this is the kind of thing that I'd like to see. And I don't want too many restrictions. I mean, yes, we have 2 restrictions on 2 bounces and the limited over. Fine. In Test cricket, I wouldn't want to be putting in any more, I don't want to ring fence a bowler from using his arsenal of bowling weapons.
Yeah, you want Fayez but to be peppering them, and don't you?
Yes, absolutely. And then they're talking about this thing that you need to have friendly wickets. What's a friendly wicket? I want to go to West Indies and see green wickets, and I want to go to England and see the ball swing by a yard. I want to do that. I want the ball in Pakistan and India to turn a yard and a half. And I want to go to Australia, to Perth. And, I'm really sad that Perth doesn't bounce as way it used to bounce. What happened? You wouldn't have had a Dennis Lilly had Perth been a dead wicket that it is today.
Very true.
I want wickets to be country friendly. And that's what it is. You don't go to another country to play in your own backyard.
Yeah, it definitely adds to the character of the game, doesn't it?
I said I rubbish those kind of things. And one thing I was not in favor of was this so-called 10-degree and 9-degree and 15-degree law when you bowl, that you allowed the elbow to bend. I don't want to name cricketers, but I believe that if you bat with a straight bat and that is good cricket, you bowl with a straight arm and that is good cricket. Simple. No ambiguity in that. It doesn't matter whether you're born with any disformity, nothing. No. You bowl with a straight arm, you bowl with a straight arm. Colors. That's it. There's no such thing as a 9-degree elbow and a 15-degree elbow and go get yourself tested. No. A batsman knows and an umpire knows when one chucks. And a bowler knows that he's bent his arm. Period. Thank you.
I think that's a good way to finish off, Nick. What about you?
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
A true cricket man in every sense of the word, Mr. Pankaj Khimji. Thank you so much for joining the Emerging Cricket Podcast. Good luck with everything in Omani cricket over the next, lifetime, I hope, because it sounds as if cricket is in very, very good hands there. Hopefully we see Oman at a T20 World Cup and we see you in the stands fist pumping every wicket and every boundary that Oman score or take. Thanks once again for joining the Emerging Cricket Podcast, and good luck not only in Oman but for the ACC as well under your vice presidency. We look forward to all of that as well.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much, Nick, and look forward to seeing you in Oman in the not too distant future.
Oh, we can't wait. When we're allowed out of Australia, we are the first people there.
Good. If not, we'll see you at the World Cup.
Hi, this is Anshi Rath, and you're listening to the Emerging Cricket Podcast.
A huge thank you again to Pankaj for joining us on the show, one of the big personalities in the emerging game, and we hope that came across to you wherever you are around the world listening. We look forward to Oman and Asia's progress under his leadership as well. Next week, we'll wrap the Scotland and Netherlands one-day series, as well as everything else in the emerging game. But for now, make sure to log on to emergingcricket.com for all the news in the associate world and follow us on your various social media platforms. On behalf of everyone here at the Emerging Cricket Podcast, we'll see you next week.